Today's guest is Mississippi Supreme Court Justice James Graves, Jr. Justice Graves, what is it like being the only African American on the Mississippi Supreme Court?
Well, being a Supreme Court Justice, African American or not, is an awesome responsibility because we have, I think, an obligation to try and ensure that the people whose cases appear before that court ultimately receive justice. And so that responsibility in and of itself, irrespective of race, is just an awesome responsibility. When you add the overlay of the fact that I happen to be the only African American on the court, I mean, I think that holds some significance. I certainly am a product of my background, my environment, my upbringing, and so I hope that what I bring to bear on my decision making is at least in part influenced by who I am, the way I was raised, and what that upbringing is. And of course, that includes the undeniable fact that I'm an African American.
Okay. What is your favorite part of the job?
That is difficult to say. I think the favorite part of the job probably really is reading, the research, learning new things, discovering new things. It is still exciting to me to learn, to read, to learn, to discover something brand new, to learn about an area of the law that I may not have known about before, to come across or encounter an issue that's novel, that's new, that I haven't explored before. Those kinds of things are exciting.
What is the most challenging part of the job?
Most challenging for me, considering that I was a trial judge for 10 years before becoming an appellate judge, where as a trial judge, I didn't have to consult with anybody, I didn't have to check with anyone else, I didn't have to get anyone else's agreement in order to make a ruling. And so probably the most challenging part for me is dealing with the dynamic of being an appellate judge on a 9-member court where you have to have at least 4 other people agree with you in order to constitute a majority opinion on that court. And so you have to recognize that there's just a different dynamic at work in order to reach a decision in an environment like that.
As you know, there are a lot of judge TV shows. Do you think citizens can learn a lot from watching those shows?
TV judge shows are entertainment. I mean, television, for the most part, is about entertainment. There is some educational TV, but the TV judge shows are not found on educational television channels. They're found on entertainment channels. And so they really are entertainment. And I think while I don't have a problem with people viewing those shows for entertainment purposes, there is a disservice which is done by those shows to the extent that people think that that's what court is really like. And so somebody who watches Judge Joe Brown every day for 2 months now thinks they know a lot about the law and how cases are supposed to go, and you really don't. You know a lot about how things go on Judge Joe Brown's show. But those shows are probably more unlike what real court is than they are like the way real court is. And so I think people can come away with a very, very skewed view of what court is really like. And then they're coming away with some sense that they really know how the courts work or what the justice system is like. I don't know how much of a service they do in that regard.
Yes.
They can be very entertaining, I imagine.
Exactly. Well, would you say that the laws in Mississippi might vary differently from the laws of the state where they're in?
Absolutely. I mean, every state has its own legislature or assembly or whatever they call that body that makes laws for that state. And then those laws are, of course, codified and become a code for that particular state. And a lot of laws can differ from state to state.
Well, speaking of Mississippi laws, are there any lemon laws in Mississippi?
Lemon laws. You know, I think we do. I know the Attorney General's office has a consumer protection division. I know we don't have nearly as many consumer protection laws in place in our state as some other states have.
Okay. What about when someone is pulled over by the police? What can the police do or not do?
There are things that police can do, and I'm sure police officers are trained in how to make an appropriate stop, how to make an appropriate arrest, that kind of thing. I mean, as a very practical matter, what I tell my sons is, at the side of the road in the middle of the night is not the place to discuss your constitutional rights.
Exactly.
So my best advice is you need to try to comply with what the officer says or requests of you at that moment.
Right, exactly. I agree. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Performance Insurance, Kim Hackett, owner. Phone 601-354-5466. Action Limos for weddings, proms, bachelor and bachelorette parties. Action Limos, 601-665-7433. We are back with Mississippi Supreme Court Justice James Graves, Jr. Justice Graves, where did you go to college?
Went to college here in Jackson at Millsaps College.
Was there a particular reason why you chose Millsaps?
I chose Millsaps College because Millsaps had a pre-engineering program. And when I started college, my plan was to major in engineering and to become an electrical engineer.
Really?
And Millsaps had a program, a cooperative program with Columbia University in New York, and so I was going to do 2 years at Millsaps and then my last 2 years at Columbia in engineering. That's why I chose Millsaps.
I understand that you met your wife at Millsaps College. Is that true?
That's correct. You have an excellent research department. My wife and I were both undergraduate students at Millsaps College, and that's where we met.
Okay. What was she studying at Millsaps?
Business administration was actually her major, and then she earned a master's at Jackson State University and ultimately a PhD at Jackson State. But we met as undergraduate students at Millsaps College.
That's wonderful. Well, did you play basketball at Millsaps?
Well, you know, I could claim that I played varsity. I actually played intramural basketball.
Oh, really?
When I did.
Okay.
And we won a few championships.
Oh, you're being modest.
Well, yeah.
Okay, well, where did you go to law school?
Went to law school in New York at Syracuse University.
Okay, so what was it like going to law school at Syracuse?
It was very, very different from being in Mississippi. It's the northeast region of the country. Culturally, demographically, it was a lot different from Jackson. I probably learned as much outside the classroom as I learned in the classroom. I mean, I learned about different ethnic groups, and you know, I went to school with Jewish people and Italians, and you know, I grew up in a Baptist, Southern Baptist household. Right. Went to Catholic schools. Went to a Methodist college at Millsaps, and then I ended up at law school where we have Jewish holidays off. So there was a lot of culture that was different from what I had been exposed to previously, and I think that helped me to grow a lot as a person outside the classroom. So being in upstate New York was a really good experience for me.
That's wonderful. Well, did you have to adjust to the cold weather?
I did. It was just very, I mean, there were times when we would go for 2 straight weeks and never get up to 32 degrees.
What?
So it was very
challenging, huh?
Yes. And I just kept telling myself, I'm from Mississippi. I don't have to live like this.
Why did you decide to come back to Mississippi to practice law?
I came back to Mississippi because, and it sounds really corny when you say it out loud, but I came back to Mississippi because I wanted to help people. And I wanted to help people in Mississippi. And so it was always my determination that no matter where I went for my education, I was going to come back to Mississippi to work and practice law. I think I always knew I wanted to help people, and I always saw politics as one avenue to do that. I don't know when I first decided that I wanted to be a judge.
Yes.
I just remember that a vacancy occurred on the circuit bench, and I remember watching the announcement about Justice Banks being appointed to the Supreme Court, and my thought was, wow, I wonder who's going to take his place.
Right.
And then I got some calls, and people suggested that I should be interested, and then I was interested, and I ended up being appointed by Governor Mabus as a circuit judge, and so I had to run for that seat, and so I was thrust into politics by virtue of the fact that being a circuit judge required that you run for the office.
Right. Okay. So what was it like when you first became a circuit court judge?
The first day?
Yes.
I was terrified. I had not gone to any judge school. I had not had any formal training or preparation to become a circuit judge.
Oh.
I mean, a judge, obviously, a circuit judge, obviously is someone who is trained in the law. You have to be a licensed practicing attorney.
Right.
But the first day as a judge, you feel all of the responsibility for wanting to be right, to be correct, to do the right thing,
Yes.
to make sure that you're reaching just and fair decisions,
Yes.
while at the same time, it's your first day on the job, the same as it be the first day on the job for some guy going to the factory. And so you're nervous, you want to do well, you want to make a good impression.
Yeah.
It was frightening that first day.
Oh, wow.
But it was exciting.
It was exciting. Okay, well, do you remember your first case?
I do.
You do?
I do.
Okay.
You mean the first trial, the case where I actually had a trial?
Yes.
I remember that case.
Oh, tell me about it.
Now, if you ask me to remember the details, I'll remind you that I told you earlier I had an outstanding ability to forget those cases. I remember that one because it was first.
Right.
And it was a case that had something to do with a realtor and the purchase of a home.
Oh, really?
And some problems with the property, and maybe some, I don't know if it was foundation problems or something with the house. And that was the basis for the lawsuit.
Oh, well, have you ever had to overturn a jury decision?
As a trial judge, I probably did it maybe twice. I just have, generally, a very healthy respect for our jury system, for the fact that jurors have the ability to listen to the facts, to hear the witnesses, to examine the evidence, to apply the law, and to reach a correct decision. And so it was very, very, very rare that I was even inclined to set aside the verdict of a jury.
We're going to take a break right here, and we'll be right back. Hair Care 101, 4310 North State Street. Phone 601-982-9432. We are back with Mississippi Supreme Court Justice James Graves, Jr. Justice Graves, tell me about where you grew up.
I grew up in Clinton, Mississippi.
And what was it like growing up there?
Well, I was actually born in Clinton and raised there. Born kind of out in the rural part of Clinton. My parents actually moved into the house where they still live when I was about 12.
Okay.
And, you know, I was raised in a house with both my parents and with 5 siblings.
Yes.
It was, for me, a wonderful childhood. We were poor. I didn't know how poor we were until I was old enough to start watching TV, and I saw all this stuff on TV that other people had, and we didn't have. You know, on TV they say, go upstairs to your room. And I go, they got a house with an upstairs? But for me, it was a normal childhood. And my parents were very loving parents.
Yes.
They wanted us to have the best education we could have. They viewed education as the key to us having a life better than the one they had.
Yes.
And so they valued education. They emphasized it. We were expected to study, to do well in school.
Yes.
We were expected to go to college.
Yes.
And there wasn't any democracy. There was no debate. There was no vote on whether or not you were going to college. You were going.
Right.
So that's the kind of household I grew up in. There was a lot of love. There was a lot of discipline. Expectations were high.
Yes.
And, I think I was highly motivated for a lot of reasons, not the least of which was fear of what my parents might do if I didn't do what they told me.
So where did you graduate from high school?
Graduated from what was then Sumner Hill High School in Clinton. It's now, I think, just a 9th grade center for the City of Clinton School District, but at the time, it was the high school for the county where African Americans went to school, because the school system up through 1970 was segregated, and so Sumner Hill High School was where African Americans in the county went to high school.
Okay.
Now, I actually lived through in high school the period where there was a desegregation order and the schools became integrated and all of that.
Oh, really?
And I was still in high school when all of that happened.
Oh, really?
So it was an interesting time to grow up, and Clinton, Mississippi was an interesting place to have grown up.
Well, I understand that you received some honors while you were in high school, right?
A few.
Yeah.
I was valedictorian of the class.
Okay.
I was star student because I had the highest ACT score and the highest grade point average. And I think at the time I made the highest ACT score that had ever been made at my school. But I'm sure that record's been broken 1,000 times since then, because that was a long time ago. But and so I had a few honors and awards over the course of my years in high school.
That was great. Well, did you have to study hard, or were you just naturally smart?
It's going to sound arrogant if I say I was just naturally smart. Frankly, in high school, I don't think I had to study hard, and I say that in comparison to the kind of studying I had to do at Millsaps.
Okay.
At Millsaps, I had to study hard in order to make decent grades and to get a degree from Millsaps College. Yes. High school wasn't that hard for me.
Okay.
I did well in high school, and I was typically able to do it. I mean, most of the time I could take study hall and do most of my work.
Oh,
so
that's good.
It wasn't that difficult for me. Okay. College, on the other hand, was a challenge.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, when I started Millsaps, and I chose Millsaps because they had the pre-engineering program. So I think by the time I was going to college, I decided I wanted to be an electrical engineer. Okay. Before that, growing up, I used to build things. I'd build benches and chairs, and so I would make stuff. And so I thought I wanted to be a carpenter. So there was a period of time where I thought I wanted to be a carpenter. Then it was electrical engineering. So I'm not sure at what point I decided that I wanted to go into law. But that's not something, I mean, I was out of college for a year and a half, 2 years before I started law school. So I didn't go immediately to law school from college. So growing up, I mean, what I wanted to be kind of evolved over the years. I just knew I didn't want to be poor. Exactly. So I wanted to have a job where I could make enough money to take care of myself and my family.
Right. Okay. Well, that was a good goal. Tell me, did you have a nickname while you were growing up?
I certainly had a nickname while I was growing up, and my brothers and sisters still refer to me by that nickname.
Is that right?
And I am not about to share that nickname with you and your viewers here on the air.
Oh, why not?
I'm not going to do that. You can't get it out of me.
Because are you afraid somebody might call you by that name?
People do call me by that name, the ones who know, but I'm not sharing it.
What is your favorite food?
That is very difficult to say. Food is something I'm very passionate about. I love to cook. I cook 3-4 times a week. I cook a huge meal every Sunday.
Is that right?
I love to cook. I have my own recipes, and so I can get very excited about cooking.
Tell me about one of your gourmet meals.
Well, I don't know that you would call them gourmet. For example, this past Sunday, I think I cooked cabbage greens on a bed of ground turkey. I made sweet potatoes. I made cornbread. And I don't use Jiffy Mix. It's cornbread from scratch.
No.
Cornbread, and then I had smothered turkey breast cutlets, gravy, and rice.
Oh, my goodness.
So that's a typical Sunday meal. And then I'll cook 3-4 times during the week if I have time to do that.
Really?
It's very relaxing for me. Cooking is like therapy for me.
Right.
I get in the kitchen and I just relax.
So if you cook during the week, how long does it take you to throw something together?
I have a lot of recipes, my own recipes that are quick recipes. I can walk into the kitchen at 6 and have dinner on the table by 7:30.
Oh, really?
And sometimes faster than that, depending on what I'm preparing.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Well, can you fry chicken?
I do not fry chicken. I try to avoid fried foods as much as I can. I like fried foods.
Okay.
But I try to avoid cooking fried food because I figure I get enough fried foods by showing up at Kentucky Fried Chicken once a week to get my fix. So I try to avoid doing that.
What is your favorite television show?
It's probably a really good football game.
Oh, really?
I like NFL football.
Okay.
I like pro basketball, although I don't really watch pro basketball much until the playoffs.
Okay.
And then I have, you say my favorite shows. I'm trying to think of what shows that I try not to miss.
Okay.
Probably 24, although last season was not that great. And Girlfriends happens to be a show that I like.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites too.
Yeah.
I understand that you have also lectured at Harvard.
Yes. Harvard has a child advocacy workshop for, previously it was just third-year law students. This year they opened it up, this past school year they opened it up for second and third-year law students, where they bring in lawyers and judges from all over the country to teach law students how to try lawsuits.
Okay.
And I've had the good fortune to be invited to Harvard to teach as a part of that program for probably about 10 times over the past 10 years.
And what was that like, being at Harvard?
At first, it was very intimidating.
Really?
Because I'm surrounded by lawyers and professors and judges who are very bright, very knowledgeable.
Well, so
and that's just the people I work with.
Yeah.
That's not counting the students who are very bright and very knowledgeable. So that kind of an academic, scholarly, learned environment can be very intimidating. And so it's exciting, it's stimulating, it compels you to read, to stay sharp, to keep current on what's happening in the profession, and it helps me to hone my skills.
Yes.
Your listening skills, your analytical skills, all of which serve you well as a judge.
Right. I also understand you have received a lot of awards over the years. Tell me about some of them.
Now that is very difficult for me to talk about. I've received a number of awards over the years. I think the one that means the most to me is I was awarded Parent of the Year by the Jackson Public School District in 2001. Okay. And I have received a lot of awards. That's probably the one that means the most to me. Okay. And then I came in second in the entire state of Mississippi for Parent of the Year.
Really?
And that just meant a lot to me because it says that some other people thought that I was a good parent. And I just think that's a very important job. So it's nice to have someone say, I think you're doing it pretty well.
Oh, that is wonderful. Okay, so tell me about your children.
I have 3 sons.
Okay.
They're all here in Jackson.
Okay.
They're all adults. And they're all employed, so I'm very happy about that.
They're all employed, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Where do they work?
Well, 2 of my sons are lawyers and 1 is a banker.
Really?
Yes, and I'd be plugging their respective employers if I said where they work, but I will tell you that 2 are lawyers and 1's a banker. And they're all here in town.
You have done a fantastic job.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, you know what? You wear so many hats, and you wear them well.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps up today's show. Thank you for watching.